What up? What up? What's going on, everybody?
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to our show tonight. Me and the ladies have decided to talk about what is most important on everybody's mind, which is this vaccine. We will start off with some hot topics before the vaccine, but the COVID-19 vaccine has dominated our lives, and I'm sure it's dominated a lot of your lives as well. And so Dr. Kristen, Dr. Amber, Dr. Shamika, and Dr. Lakeisha want to kind of come in and kind of debunk some of the myths that you guys have heard and talk about the facts. What's most important about the vaccine, what you should think about, and more important, where you should get your information from. The biggest thing is there's nothing wrong with questioning the speed of the vaccine and how quickly it came, but essentially what is important is making sure you get your facts right and making sure you're getting your facts from places that are not only valid but also evidence-based. And so that's our biggest thing for tonight. We're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it sweet. We're going to talk about some hot topics first. So I'm going to swing it to the ladies and ask them if they are done Christmas shopping, because I know this one is not. Judge your mamas. I'm not done Christmas shopping. I ain't even started Christmas shopping. Right? I ain't gonna lie.
My middle name is procrastination. If it ain't gotta get done,
in case y'all didn't know, Kristen is the younger version of me, so we both have not. We ain't done no Christmas shopping.
I'm just saying, Amazon Prime, don't fail me now.
Right? I don't know. I'm a little nervous. I don't know if we can even rely on Amazon Prime this year. It's crazy. But we'll try our best.
I'm hoping for the best. I'm hoping that I can order everything tonight and it be here by Christmas.
Girl, all we can do is pray.
Because you already know I'm not stepping foot inside a mall.
Between
this gonna happen or it's not gonna happen.
Yeah. And now
y'all gonna either get gifts on Christmas or y'all gonna get gifts on January 1st, but I'm not going to nobody's mall, so y'all can get no gifts.
Yeah,
sorry.
It's above me now. It's
above me now.
Sorry.
Think about God.
But yeah, this snowstorm probably is not going to help our packages get here on time.
4 feet in some parts of New York. 4 feet.
Yeah, that's what I heard this morning
here. So
it was like almost 4.5 feet last time I heard in some parts of New York. I know where I used to work in Albany, they were getting a pretty significant amount of snow as well. I know my parents in South Jersey got snow. My best friend in South Jersey got snow. It's a winter wonderland up there, so it's probably not going to help things out.
Well, I don't know if it rained or had freezing ice in Charlotte, but Monday. Was it Monday or Tuesday of this week? We had some freezing rain and, shut stuff down. We had a 2-hour delay for school starts. We don't play in this part of North Carolina. And, I used to laugh about it when I first moved here, having grown up in the Midwest. I was like, y'all, this is a joke. But really, we don't have the infrastructure to deal with ice or snow. And so it tends to be like a dangerous situation. So I understand it now.
Yeah. Growing up in the Northeast, I didn't realize that some cities don't even own salt trucks.
Right. No.
Like
when I went to college in Atlanta, and I'll never forget, they had a snowstorm. It was an inch of snow. They had like sand down. I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna happen. This ain't gonna work.
It's not gonna cut it.
This isn't what you're supposed to put down.
Right.
I tell people, were you still in Birmingham when we had that ice storm and like people was leaving their kids at daycare and at school? Yes, girl, they was leaving their cars on the side of the road. Jarvis could barely get home. I was on maternity leave with Grace, thank goodness. So I was at home, but it was terrible. It was like, it looked like the apocalypse. Everybody was awful.
I remember that ice storm, and we had to ask one of our friends whose baby was in the same daycare as Nia to pick Nia up because it took me 2 hours to get from the hospital to get home. It was awful.
It was terrible. It was really bad. Yeah.
No. So essentially, I'm saying Christmas is a maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
gifts and
y'all cutting it real close. It's December 17th.
I mean, shoot, we just got our Christmas cards out today.
I didn't even do that. I said for 2020.
Yeah.
I know. It's like you can avoid anything in 2020. Anything goes.
Maybe I'll take a picture of all my kids and post it on Facebook. I'm going to do that.
There you go. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays from the Knox crew. So on that topic, so speaking of all of Christmas and all of that, what are you guys doing for the holidays? How are you guys celebrating this year?
We're going to be right here in Indian Trail, North Carolina. We're not going nowhere.
Yeah. Just the 4 of us, just like we did for Thanksgiving. We're not going anywhere. I looked at Mike and I said, you know, I can cook. I just don't cook very often. And so I looked at him today and I said, like, maybe I'll cook Christmas dinner. He was like, where's my wife? Yeah, something. Y'all did something with my wife.
Brother, don't be acting like you can't cook.
I mean, I can't. It's just I don't do it often. Really, mostly for time. But you know, I'll have some time next week, and so you know, at least maybe I'll do the sides. You know what I mean?
Well, that's good. I know I cooked dinner the other night, and Asher was like, "Mommy, you can cook." I'm like, boy, get out of here. Just because I don't cook don't mean I can't.
Right.
Now, see, my kids do know I can cook, and they'd be like, Mommy, why ain't you cooking dinner?
Yeah, Tamika, you throw down.
Mommy's tired.
Right.
Like, Mommy's a little tired, sweetie. He was like, man, you cook better than Daddy. And I'm like,
I don't want to be rushed, you know, like I want to cook. I want to listen to music. I want to drink wine. Like I want a whole experience. I can't do that, especially during the week. Like I don't have time for a cooking experience.
Yeah. You know what I don't like about cooking? I don't like meal prepping. I don't like trying to figure out in advance, okay, what are we going to eat? Okay, now we know what we're going to eat. What do I need to get from the grocery store to make said meal? Now I have to go to the grocery and get the, no, I'm not doing all that. It's not.
It's a whole process.
This is definitely a whole process. Like cooking is a process in general. I enjoy every aspect of it. But I like to cook in silence, which is weird because people will come into my house and be like, why is it so quiet in here? I like to cook when it's just me and the stove.
Yeah. Is that when you gather your thoughts?
It is. It's cathartic for me.
That's good.
Call me whatever.
We all need to spend more time in silence overall. There's always so much going on.
Always something.
Yeah.
That I could and could not be doing. All right, y'all. So let's get to it.
Let's do it.
It is the vaccine. It's out there. Yes. I'm excited.
That's the FDA.
No, I got my email. I got my email last night from the North Carolina Department of Human Health Services. And so I registered and I got the email that says you are a candidate for the vaccine. So I'm just waiting for my email from Employee Health to get scheduled and go. And I'm excited.
I'm not gonna lie to you and say that I'm not super excited about this vaccine. Like, I'm not gonna say I have had 3 patients that have passed in the last 6 weeks, less than 6 weeks from this vaccine. I mean, from COVID-19. So some of them young, some of them old, and I am ready. Like, I am ready. But also I am willing to dig into the research and do some stuff that, that my patients need. I told my patients over the last week, they're like, are you going to get the vaccine? And I'm like, yes, let me be your guinea pig. Let me take a medicine. Let me take the vaccine before you get it. Like, let me do that for you. Because 1, I'm willing to do that for you. But 2, I want to make sure it's safe for you because I know what this virus can do to you. And so let me be your guinea pig.
Yeah. And I think it's awesome that, I'm sorry, Dr. M, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dr. Kristen. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's so awesome that there are so many healthcare workers, physicians, scientists out there who are willing to do just like you're saying, Dr. Tamika, and to document their own vaccine journey to put out there and to share with others who may be a little bit more skeptical, who may be fearful. And for some people, they have good reason. And we'll probably talk a little bit about some of the historical things in this country that do make certain demographics not trust the healthcare system. So I think it's great that you have these people stepping up and stepping in to really show people that, yes, I trust the science, I trust the data, and I'm getting the vaccine too.
Yeah,
I think go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's important.
Yeah. So, those historical atrocities, especially some of the race-based atrocities that happened in medicine, are still alive and well. So I was talking to my mother yesterday, and she was talking to one of our relatives who's in her 80s. And she told my mom that she believed that there was a vaccine that had been made for Black people, and there was a vaccine that was made for white people. Clearly, that's not true. But before I jumped to judge this older family member, I had to remember that this family member was born in rural Alabama, not too far from where the Tuskegee experiments took place. So these atrocities are alive and well for her.
Yeah,
I think it's important that we do not sweep our patients' concerns under the rug, or our viewers' concerns under the rug, that we deal with them head on, because one, there's things that we see in the research that they may not see, but two, it's real. That happened not in our mothers and our grandmothers' time. Tuskegee Experiment was not that long ago. And so of course they are going to have some concerns about it.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely something that we have to address, because it's not fiction. Like y'all said, it is something that really happened and not too long ago. So it's definitely understandable that some people have paused, not because of the data or because of conspiracy theories per se, but just because of historical cases like that, like the Tuskegee Experiment.
Exactly. And I mean, it's more than just the Tuskegee. We look at the numbers of COVID. We've all looked at these numbers as they've come through over the last 9 months. And we've all seen that there's a huge healthcare disparity between African Americans and non-African Americans. I mean, it's clear. And so my biggest concern when I tell patients, this vaccine for us is really important. And I get it that you're skeptical. Perfectly fine to be skeptical. Let me do the research. Let me talk. Let your friends who are in healthcare do the research so we can make sure we are safe, because there's a clear healthcare disparity. And part of that comes from the fact that we live in very populated cities. We don't tend to live rural. And so we're not far away from each other. So we live in apartments. We live in the city. I still miss the city. I live in Fishers, Indiana. I miss the city every day, all day. But that puts us at increased risk because we're closer to people all day, every day. And so that definitely puts us at increased risk for this virus, for any virus really, but it's specifically for this virus that is killing us at increased rates.
And then I think you couple that with, our higher prevalence of other coexisting conditions that put you at increased risk from having some of the more severe symptoms, and that doesn't help the situation. So I would echo Dr. Tamika's sentiments that this is disproportionately affecting Brown and Black people. And so I think it's very important for physicians of color, especially, to make sure that we're arming our communities with facts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's get into some of the facts.
Let's get into them. Let's start with the first one.
Yeah. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with the flu and COVID is very similar.
Okay.
So I'll start with this one because it's the easiest one to debunk. The flu and COVID are not the same. They are not even close to the same. And part of that is we've been taught that, oh, this is the same as the flu. People have talked about this over and over again. Well, let's talk about mortality rate just in general. So the mortality rate for COVID is 2 to 3%. The mortality rate for the flu is 0.1%. So
that's a huge difference.
That is a huge
20-fold difference.
I mean, huge difference just in that alone. So people are like, oh, people die from the flu every year. Yes, they do. And they die from about a 30 to 50%, 50,000 people rate for a whole year. COVID has already taken 300,000 U.S. citizens in 2020. And it's not even a year. Technically, the year would be March.
Right. And now think about it. We've reached the point where every single day we're losing more Americans than we did on 9/11. Every single day. Like, does that sound like the flu? Like, the flu has been around for how long? We've never sat here and compared how many people died on 9/11 to how many people are dying from the flu.
Right.
Never, ever. And I think that we are now desensitized to it. Like, oh, 3,000 deaths. Oh, that's not, I don't know anybody that died. So it's no big deal. But it is. Like, it really, really is. And when you think about it, 3,000, I mean, you remember how I remember even where I was the day of 9/11.
Me too. Mm-hmm.
I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing. I was in medical school, in case you guys wondered. I was a second-year medical student, headed to class. I was running late. And I was listening to Russ Parr in the morning. In case all you East Coast may know Russ Parr. Dr. Kristen probably knows Russ Parr because he's based in D.C. And I was like, oh, shoot, Rustin said somebody hit the World Trade. I was like, that don't sound like just a random. I remember where I was. So imagine every day remembering where you are. Mm-hmm. So as a physician, every day for the last several weeks, I know where I am. Like, I look at those numbers every day and realize what we are losing. Yeah. Every day when I walk into my office and every patient has a COVID story, whether I have a patient who lost both their parents on the same day to a patient that lost their job and their family member within a week, I hear that every day. So imagine, I know where I am during this pandemic, I know where I am every day. Because every day I have a story to tell about how COVID has affected someone.
I think that's really similar for a lot of healthcare workers, especially those like you, Dr. Tamika, who are really close to the front line. I think for others who may not be as close to the devastation that this virus is having on people, it may be easier to kind of just be like out of sight, out of mind, because it's not happening directly to them, or fortunately not happening to somebody else. But for those of us who are seeing patients, we're having to take all of these additional precautions. This is a busy time of year for me, even though I'm not in the operating room right now or in the intensive care unit. Many patients have met their deductibles for their health insurance, and so people are trying to get their physician visits and various procedures done. So we're seeing a record number of patients right now, and our positivity rate at the same time in this area of North Carolina is close to 20%, meaning 1 out of every 5 people has COVID. And so those are alarming numbers. And so, again, for me, based on the data that we have about the Pfizer vaccine that was released this week, I feel like the benefits of this vaccine outweigh the risks for me, being a relatively healthy person, thankfully with no other coexisting conditions and no other contraindications for getting this vaccine. And we're gonna delve into who should be getting the vaccine, who shouldn't be getting the vaccine at this point.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of people are curious to know more about the vaccine itself, or today we just say vaccines because fortunately the FDA has started the approval process for the second COVID-19 vaccine by Moderna. But I know, if you ask a lot of people back in March, April, May, when things were really starting to get bad and talk about a vaccine was down the line, and most people are like, oh, I don't want to take no vaccine, that because they're going to rush through it. We're not going to know the side effects. And I mean, it's definitely something that gave a lot of people pause initially when there was talk about a vaccine before the end of the year. But actually, what I found out recently is that the technology that they use to make these mRNA vaccines, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but the technology that they used to make these vaccines has been in the works for years. This is just the first vaccine that's come along that they've been able to actually use that technology. So while it seemed like it was rushed, or it seemed like it didn't take nearly as long as previous vaccines, well, that's because it didn't. I mean, one, the technology's been in the works for years, but also think about how much money has been poured into funding this vaccine. So, I mean, it being a global pandemic, you have international companies and all sorts of agencies that are really pouring money into these companies to come out with this vaccine. So that being said, yes, this vaccine did take a much shorter time, but for good reason. We have this new technology that's able to create vaccines sooner. Anybody want to tackle mRNA? Because I know a lot of questions people ask is, well, is this a live vaccine? Are you actually giving me the coronavirus? I think that is also like something that people worry about or are unsure about.
So the mRNA-based vaccine, and I feel like I'm having issues with my internet connection tonight, so I apologize. But the mRNA vaccine is not a live attenuated vaccine like others, and so you can think of it as like I heard a really great analogy the other day about it as mRNA, like delivering an email to your inbox and recognizing it as such, as an email that's not spam, but is a good email. And that's the same thing that mRNA does. It delivers this. It delivers an email, a packaged form of the virus that's not live to your system, so that it can start to recognize it as not something that's not not bad, and getting your body used to the virus. So it's not, to answer your question, mRNA vaccine is not a live attenuated vaccine.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's important for people to understand. And a lot of times when we talk about side effects of vaccines, you hear people saying that, oh, I got a vaccine for this and it gave me whatever it was supposed to prevent. But a lot of times we feel sick after vaccines, not because we have the virus or the disease that the vaccine is trying to prevent, is that our bodies are creating this immune response, which is exactly what we want it to do, because we want to train our bodies so when it does see the actual virus, it will already have a strong arsenal to fight it. Because having the vaccine, it's not to say that you can't get the coronavirus if someone standing in front of you sneezes in your face, but you are so much less likely to get sick to the point where you need to be hospitalized or sick to where it can even be fatal. I mean, your chance of survival after having the vaccine and your body already having your immune system knowing what to do to tackle it, it just, this is what you want. You want that immune response. It may make you feel kind of crummy afterwards, but that means it's working. It's your body building up its immune response.
So, Kristen, just to piggyback on that, so the way that the Pfizer vaccine works is that it's a two-step process. So you get the first dose, and those reactions have been reported as just being similar to other vaccine reactions: soreness at the site, maybe some redness or warmth at the site, and then after that, you come back, at least for the Pfizer vaccine, you come back 21 days and you get a booster. And this is, again, just to kind of continue what Dr. Kristen was saying, this is just to make sure that your body has recognized and is building the appropriate immune response. As such, after that second vaccine, there were reports of patients having fever, headaches, and chills for several days after the booster, after that 21 days, as to be expected, as your body is appropriately mounting up this immune system. We do have a question from one of our people watching tonight, and the question is, what would you say to people who worry about the long-term side effects of the vaccine? And I think that's a valid question, because the safety and efficacy data that Pfizer released only as of now follows the 40,000 something patients that received, well, 20,000, approximately 20,000 who received the vaccine and 20,000 who did not receive the vaccine, the placebo group. We only have about 60 days worth of safety data. So we are right to be, to be questioning what the long-term effects of the vaccine is. We don't have that data quite yet, at least for the Pfizer vaccine. But when I think about that, I think about, we don't know what the long-term effects from active COVID infection is too. And we're seeing some of our even healthy patients. And Dr. Tamika was telling us a few months ago that she had a patient who was relatively healthy. A few weeks after recovering from the COVID infection, that patient ended up coming up with a stroke. And we now have increasing data about patients having stroke after being diagnosed with COVID. So, in terms of again, weighing these risks and the benefits, I really feel strongly that the risk, not knowing the long-term effects of the vaccine is a risk I am willing to take, given the data of what we know about coming out about long-term risks of COVID.
Right. And I think that that's super important to talk about. And it's not just my patient who was healthy, who had a stroke, but it's all the patients that I've seen. My marathon runner who now can't climb a flight of stairs because she gets short of breath and her heart rate goes up to 180 every time she tries to climb up 5 steps, or the patients who are 18 or 19 who no longer can smell or taste their food. So now they can't eat because tasting French fries tastes like acid to them. And so that's really important. One of my patients said, well, why would you get the vaccine? Most people heal from this disease. And I was like, well, heal is different than survive. Like, a lot of people survive this vaccine or survive COVID, but they don't necessarily heal from COVID. And so knowing those side effects that most people don't talk about, that they don't deal with, is really, really important. A lot of patients deal with COVID I have patients who are still dealing with COVID who got COVID in March. It's December. It's about to be Christmas. We just talked about buying Christmas gifts. It's December. And we are still talking about essentially what some symptoms patients have had since March. And so that's concerning, especially some of these heart symptoms that they're having even now in December. You think, oh, no sense of smell, no sense of taste. That's no big deal. But what if they're having heart issues 9 months later? Or what if they're they need a lung transplant because of COVID? And I mean, that's a thing. The people are getting lung transplants
an amputation of a limb.
Yeah,
like the
or a
white
limb. So, I mean, I think that's really important, and to just put it all on the table. A vaccine versus COVID. COVID can cause death. So far, this vaccine has not been shown to do so.
Yeah. I know one potential thing that has seemed to come up a lot. I've heard people bring up the incidence of Bell's palsy. But looking at the actual data, the incidence of Bell's palsy from the trials is no higher than it is in the general population. So that is reassuring that it may not have been a causative thing more so than just, any of us could wake up tomorrow and have Bell's palsy. So the fact that the data is not showing any increase in incidence is reassuring.
Exactly. And that's what I try to tell patients too, is like, find someone that you trust. Find a physician or a friend, a nurse practitioner, somebody you really, really trust that you can get accurate information from. Because looking at the data, it literally shows that there's no difference between getting Bell's palsy as a general population, no vaccine, no nothing, as compared to this vaccine. And so that's important to know, because that's a huge distinction. That's the number one thing I've seen on my feed lately is about Bell's palsy. One of the questions we had is, what do you say to the Black community who is not trusting of the government and how fast they feel this vaccine was pushed? There's a lot of people who just don't trust it.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I want to make sure that people know that, first of all, the vaccine was tested on about the people who participated in the clinical trial for this vaccine. 9% were African American, and our population in the United States is about 13% Black or African American, and 9% is actually fairly good for a clinical trial because of the historical atrocities that we mentioned earlier. It is extremely difficult to recruit minority populations into clinical trials, especially Black or African Americans. So it may provide some reassurance to people who are concerned about the way that the vaccine was pushed through and the way that the government handled that. At least that they were trying to do due diligence and make sure that there was a appropriate representation. And just to compare, that 9% is almost twice as high as what we see for large cancer clinical trials, where usually the numbers are in the 5% range or even lower. So that's reassuring. I agree, and I can hear people's concern about government involvement. I do want to let people know that one of the leading scientists who works at the NIH, who was recently praised by Dr. Fauci, is an African American. She was one of the leading scientists developing and leading the efforts of this COVID-19 vaccine. Not to say that that's going to take away all of the concerns about government involvement, but there was representation at the top, which to me is extraordinary, and it's a historical moment for science.
I mean, not only that, but I think that what's even more important is, Dr. Amber, what you talked about is just the participation in African Americans. But the other aspect of this, especially with Pfizer, they didn't get any money from the government. They were not part of Warp Speed. They did not get the money. And the other aspect of this is not only did they not get the money, but this was a global, like this study was done over multiple countries. It was not just done in the United States. And that is really important because people think, oh, the study was just done and concentrated in the United States. It was not. This was a global data analysis by multiple people. And it was a double-blind study, which is the best study we have to essentially say, when I am a nurse or a doctor giving you the vaccine, I don't know what I'm giving you, and you don't know what you're getting. And so we blinded it both ways. And that's the best type of study we could ever do to prove that something is effective or not effective.
Yeah. I would tell people who were concerned about, any kind of myths to just really to try to focus in on the data that's available. And what do I mean by the data? The safety data that we have 60 days going out from the study, and the efficacy data that shows, almost a 90% plus immune response after getting the vaccine, meaning that you have developed the appropriate antibodies against the virus. Those are the facts with regards to the data that we have available. We had a question earlier, I believe, about, if you already had the COVID virus, should you get, or the COVID infection, should you get the vaccine?
So short answer, yes. So the short answer is that even though you have had the virus and you're building up antibodies on your own, those antibodies are only lasting at most six weeks. So 6 to 9 weeks is about how long those antibodies have lasted. We've already seen that the vaccine lasts longer than that. And we're still following those patients that essentially Pfizer has been following and will continue to follow, but we already know that their risk of developing COVID is lower than your risk of redeveloping COVID. And yes, people who do not realize this, yes, you can get COVID again. And I've had multiple patients who've gotten COVID again. And some of them, their symptoms have been similar, and some of them they've been worse, and some of them they've been better. So you don't know what you're going to come across the next time you develop this virus. So we already have seen that the vaccine has helped in that manner, in the fact that it has made it where you're less likely to get COVID again in that amount in 2 months' time. And so we'll continue to follow that data as it continues. Again, I try to tell patients all the time, it's going to be a while before this gets to the general population, just because they're doing healthcare workers first, and they're doing the people who work in the hospitals, and then they're doing the nursing home. Then they'll do the people who work outside of the hospitals, and probably the teachers, so we can get our kids back to school. And so it's going to be a couple months before we can see what that looks like in the general population, and before you can get the vaccine. And so it's really important. By then, we'd have even 4 months of data to go by before our next wave. And so that's really important, because that gives me an opportunity to say, hey, I'll be your guinea pig. I will gladly be your guinea pig. Let me do it. You guys are always taking medicines that I asked you to take. Let me do it this time. And in 2 months, we'll see where I am. And if I'm doing great, I'm going to recommend it for you.
Yeah. There's one more question. And the question is, how does the efficacy of the COVID vaccine compare to other vaccines?
That's a good question.
It's an excellent question. And so essentially the COVID vaccine is actually, compared to the flu, because that's what we have it the most, it's actually better than the flu. Flu is about 65% at best on some of the best years. And this is already 95%, which is showing us this is way better than the flu. And so that's actually excellent data. The fact that this is 95% effective is actually really, really good at this point. And granted, we want more data as that data comes in, and we will continue to do kind of these talks as time goes on, but this is much better than what we're used to with some of our vaccines that we've had and that we've developed. And so looking at that, this is a super effective vaccine for COVID.
Yeah.
Another question that we actually asked some of our friends and families questions that they had. And so some of the questions we had was like, does this vaccine have preservatives? So the big thing when the flu first came out, and I don't know if you guys remember this, people who are like allergic to eggs could not take the flu vaccine because some of the preservatives in the flu vaccine had egg preservatives in it. This COVID-19 vaccine has no preservatives in it, which is really good. However, if you have allergies, significant allergies where you have to use an EpiPen, so where you have anaphylaxis allergies, so say you get stung by a bee and your throat can close up, we worry about those patients more. So we are not recommending that those patients get the first wave of the vaccine just because they have increased risk of having an allergic reaction to something that they've never had in their body. But overall, this vaccine is safer and less preservatives than any vaccine we put on the market.
The other thing is that after each time that you get the vaccine, you're supposed to be observed for at least 15 minutes since this is a new vaccine, and they want to make sure that you've not had any at least immediate adverse reactions to the vaccine. You're supposed to be observed for up to 15 minutes after you get the vaccine.
And even the physicians that have been getting the vaccine, there's been a couple that actually have just said, hey, I've had an anaphylactic shock reaction before, but this is super important to me. They've essentially gotten the first dose and actually taken their EpiPen and been fine with it. That's not something we recommend for the general population, but that is something that has been going on with this vaccine. And so that's important to know as well.
We have another question, Dr. Tamika and Dr. Kristen, about kids and the vaccine. Says, I haven't seen anything about kids getting the vaccine. Have they recommended for kids yet?
So they have not recommended this vaccine for kids. Sorry, Dr. Kristen, I stepped in real quick. They haven't recommended this vaccine for kids or pregnant women. There has been a couple of physicians that have been pregnant that have been on the front line that have gotten this vaccine because they're at increased risk. But however, pregnant women and children under 12 years old, this vaccine is not recommended for as of yet because it has not been studied in that patient population. And so we have to be really careful when it hasn't been studied, essentially trying to give that vaccine to somebody who we don't know how it's going to affect them. So,
yeah. And I think the FDA approval for the Pfizer vaccine is actually for 16 and up. And I think the Moderna one that's approved today, I think I saw 18 and up for Moderna.
And then it says there's another question, and it says, can we choose between Pfizer or Moderna? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I know, for my region of the country right now, in the hospital that I work at, the only vaccine that is on the ground, it arrived on Monday morning, is Pfizer. So I am not sure when and if we will get access to the Moderna vaccine. And just to let you all know, there are other vaccine formulations that are in the process of going through approval. And two of them are non-mRNA vaccinations. So like Dr. Tamika said, this is not likely going to be available to the general population for several months. And so we will try our best to kind of keep our followers and viewers updated on this ever-changing landscape of the viruses and when they're rolling out.
And to piggyback on that question, I know one of the things that I read is about, well, there are some differences between Pfizer, which is the vaccine that has already been approved by the FDA and that people have started to get vaccinated with since Monday, I believe. But Moderna is the one that's undergoing FDA approval right now. And my understanding is that for the Pfizer vaccine, coordinating transportation and storage for the vaccine has been very tricky because it needs to stay very cold, like -75 degrees Celsius cold. So The Moderna vaccine, which is the one that's going under FDA approval now, does not have to be as cold. So it may be a matter of where you're located in the country. So for very rural places where getting a vaccine transported and staying that cold for that long is not realistic. And so the Moderna vaccine, which doesn't have to be as cold, may be a better option to transport to those places. So that may be a reason why, depending on where you live, one vaccine is offered and the other is not. As of right now, like Dr. Amber said, the Pfizer vaccine is the only one available because Moderna hasn't rolled out, just receiving FDA approval today. And I think I saw someone else did ask which vaccine works better. And Dr. Amber and Dr. Tamika both mentioned how both vaccines have great efficacy, and they're both right around 95%. There really is no statistically significant difference between the efficacy of each one.
Very true.
Both will require boosters. So Pfizer, you get your second booster shot 21 days later, and I believe for the Moderna vaccine, you're going to get your booster 28 days later. So both will require a booster. We have another question here, which I think is a really good question, and it says, what about those individuals who may have autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis? Has there been any testing in this area on immune compromised patients?
So there actually was testing done in some immunocompromised patients, and as long as they don't have a significant allergy or allergy or anaphylaxis, the tests have shown that they're just as much to be immune to COVID-19 once they get vaccinated as anyone else, which is really positive for those immunocompromised people who are worried about getting COVID-19, which is a significant worry for patients who already have significant comorbidities and are already immunocompromised. So one of the things we did, like I said, we did get questions from other people. And one of the questions was, what are the side effects? So I'll start off some of the side effects. I don't know if Dr. Kristen or Dr. Amber want to add on, but like fevers and muscle pain is significant in patients. About 20 to 30%. 13% get fevers and about 30% get muscle pain. So it's a significant amount. They're mild, but they do get them.
Yeah. And again, a low-grade fever after vaccine is not a bad thing. It's showing that your body's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and it's building that immune response. Does anybody happen to know what the recommendation is about taking like Tylenol or something like that around getting a vaccine? Because I've heard kind of differing things. Just curious if not, that's okay. I'm just thinking about.
So the studies have shown that you can take Tylenol. The questionable is the ibuprofen aspect of it, but you can actually take Tylenol to get rid of most people resolve their symptoms within 36 hours. So without anything, but if you want to take some Tylenol, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Should you take it after or before, or does it matter?
Doesn't matter. It won't affect the vaccine. So if you wanted to take it before and be proactive, you could. You know, very similar to what we give kids when my
That's what I was thinking.
Shots, I'd be like, Tylenol. I gave them Tylenol all the time when they used to get medicine. So I think a big question almost always is like, would I I get this all the time. Would I recommend this vaccine for my mother or my dad or my kids? Well, my kids right now, no, because it hasn't been studied. But for my mother or my father, absolutely. They're at increased risk. They're 60 or older. They have comorbidities. And so absolutely I would recommend it for them. And so if I'm going to tell my mom, who I love dearly, or my dad, who I love dearly, to get something, I'm not going to tell you to get something I think would hurt you. Like, I'm just not. And so all I ask is that you find somebody that you're comfortable with that's going to be willing to talk to you about this and give you honest answers. And if that's us, the KPMD, we will give you as many answers as you want. Our plan is to bring a part 2 in a couple of weeks with someone who is on the front lines, who's seen this, who's done the research, so that you can kind of talk to them and ask questions. But our main objective is, in our community, as African-American women and African-American men, we are getting hit by this virus at an alarming rate. And it is not getting better. And as I have lost 3 patients in 6 weeks, the alternative to the vaccine is death. So far, the vaccine has not caused death. And so what I'm asking you is to just have an open mind and talk to the people you trust about it.
And who also have content expertise. Everybody may have an opinion, but they may not have the the credentials and the content expertise to provide accurate information. And just be cautious about using Dr. Google as your main source. You want to go to the CDC website to get information. You want to go to Pfizer's website to get information. You want to be getting your information from reputable sources. There's one last question is, what is the number one concern that we're hearing from patients? And I think especially from my Black and brown patients is this safe? It's rushed, and I've had some say that this was used. It was politicized, and as a result, they're very wary. The pandemic went down in at the same time as the year of the election, so there's just a lot of uncertainty. But again, for all the reasons that we've already talked about today, just make sure you're arming yourself with knowledge from reputable sources, from people who have content expertise. And we will all, as we are all offered the vaccine, I'm hoping to get mine soon. We'll be documenting our journey. I'll be sharing candidly and transparently, any potential adverse reactions that I may have. I'll be documenting and documenting my journey, because it's important. It's important, again, for all of us to use. We feel very strongly that the KPMD should use our platform to share knowledge amongst communities of color. So we thank you all for listening, and please reach out to us. Either leave comments on our Facebook or Instagram pages, our website, and we will do our best to get you accurate information.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing your video, hopefully later this week, Dr. Amber.
I know it. Dr. Amber is first, I think. Dr. Amber is the first one on our platform that will be getting her shot. So follow Dr. Am, watch her journey. She'll document the day she gets a shot, the day after, so you can see what we go through when we get the shot. Let us be your guinea pigs. Let us do this. We are already the first people that will get it. So let us show you, hey, we're going to do it. We'll take one for the team and we'll be there. So we love you guys, and be safe, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah.
Stay away from crowds. Be safe. Wear a mask. Mask up.
Say it again, Dr. Amber. Tell them again.
For the love.
For the love.
Yes. Do not go to anybody's house party. Come on, y'all. We got to do better.
We can do better.
We got to do better.
Bye, y'all.
Good night.